No.
Let's try that again. Good day, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 UN Day celebration. I am Rachel Bowen Pittman, and I have the privilege to serve as the Executive Director of the United Nations Association of the USA. Before we begin, please note that today also marks our National Call-In Challenge to celebrate UN Day. We are encouraging our members and other UN supporters like you to call your US representatives and to ask them to co-sponsor the United States Commitment to Peacekeeping Act. The bill would lift an arbitrary and harmful 25% cap on US contributions to UN peacekeeping operations. A link will be provided in the chat for more details. Today, we continue the celebration of the UN's founding 76 years ago, when delegates from 50 countries came together to showcase a global commitment to international cooperation, dialogue, and shared action for peace following World War II. For those of you who may not know, UNA-USA was there at the very beginning. We were called the American Association for the United Nations, and our members used their collective voices to advocate for the UN's formation, along with 40 other organizations. Through partnerships and persistent lobbying, they played an important role in the creation of the UN Charter and its ratification by the US Congress. Personally, I am proud to work for an organization that had the foresight to advocate for the UN's formation, because no one country alone can solve the world's most pressing issues, like a global pandemic, climate change, and severe food insecurity. I am also proud to be connected with 20,000 members who are creating a blueprint for a better future through education, outreach, volunteerism, and grassroots advocacy. Because of you, the work of our founding members lives on. Thank you for your leadership, your engagement, and your membership in UNA-USA. During the program, we will be joined by Ariana Asian, our virtual illustrator, who will be capturing phrases, sentiments, and messages from our speakers and you, so that we will have a roadmap and a document to hold us all accountable. We will be checking in with her periodically throughout the program and look forward to seeing her interpretation of our individual and collective blueprint. Welcome, Ariana. I'm so excited to see what you're going to do this afternoon. To kick off today's program, I would like to thank President Biden for sending a letter to UNA-USA members in honor of the United Nations Day. We appreciate his recognition of our efforts to support the vital work of the UN and US leadership within it. We will post a link to the letter in the chat for you to read the inspiring and motivational words shared by our president. At this time, I am honored to introduce Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield, US representative to the United Nations, who sent greetings in celebration of UN Day.
Hello, everyone, and happy UN Day. 76 years ago today, the United States, joined by the United Kingdom, France, Russia, and China, ratified the United Nations Charter along with a majority of other signatories. We were determined to, as the UN Charter's opening words stated, save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, and live together in peace as good neighbors. This was a charter UNA-USA helped create and ratify. Since then, there have been fewer large-scale conflicts than at any point in history. We have prevented nuclear war, enshrined human rights protections, provided life-saving humanitarian aid, and worked to improve the lives of people around the world. Through all of it, UNA-USA was there. Now, with more than 20,000 members and 200 chapters, you continue to promote and protect the value of our diplomacy at the United Nations and help further our goals of advancing peace, prosperity, and security. Today, on UN Day, we pause to celebrate our collective achievements and consider how we can shape the UN to be a better version of itself. We must prepare ourselves to face some of the starkest challenges in UN history, from ending COVID-19 to combating climate change. I know UNA-USA will be there, as you have before, to educate, inspire, and advocate. Please know that your unending support matters. We're counting on it as much now as ever. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, Ambassador Thomas-Greenfield, for your leadership and inspirational remarks. Please know that we are cheering on the sentiments you gave during your nomination for the post. America is back, multilateralism is back, diplomacy is back. As the largest group of UN advocates in America, we will continue to use our voices and speak up in support of a strong US-UN partnership. And now I am honored to bring to the virtual stage Michele Sumilas, Assistant to the Administrator of the Bureau for Policy Planning and Learning at the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID. Michele has quite an impressive background. In addition to her many years at USAID, she worked on Capitol Hill at the Gates Foundation and Bread for the World as its executive director. Due to time, we will put her bio in the chat so you can get to know her better. Michele, thank you so much for being here today. I am excited about the conversation we're about to have.
Rachel, thank you so much for having us. We so value our relationship with the United Nations and our multilateral partners, and I'm very excited to be able to elaborate upon that today with you. So thank you, and I'm enjoying reading the chat with people all over the world who are part of UNA-US, USA. So congratulations for that.
Thank you so much, and thanks for being here. Well, let's get started. So USAID might seem really big and really vague for some of us to understand its immediate impact. Can you share a little bit more about USAID's focus areas and the intersections with the United Nations?
Absolutely. I mean, we are a big agency. We're not as big as some other ones, but we are big, pretty big. We're 10,000 people. We have missions in about 80 countries, and then we have regional and other offices in 10 others. And our budget's approximately $20 billion. We focus on lots of different key development and health issues, including the top three that President Biden and Vice President Harris have made our priorities. The first one being the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't think I need to explain to you why that's our top priority, both addressing the need for vaccine delivery and deployment, as well as preparedness. We also work extensively on climate change and work with our partners on the ground. And then finally, we're very committed to really focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion in this administration. We have had partnerships with UN organizations since the beginning. You are a key partner for us across all of our work, whether it's UNICEF or WHO, whether it's the UNFPA, when working on family planning, reproductive health issues. And then we also have a very strong line of work related to humanitarian assistance, whether that's in Afghanistan, in Haiti, in Sudan, in Ethiopia, all kinds of places. And we work hand in glove with WFP and other UN agencies doing all of that. So I look forward to elaborating on all those partnerships, but we are overlapping, I think, in nearly every area that we work in. We work with the UN organization.
Yeah, and going back to the Biden-Harris administration, when they took office earlier this year, they promised to, and they have renewed American leadership at the UN and to assume once again a presence on the global stage. So President Biden halted to withdraw from WHO, rejoined the U.S. climate agreement, and sought and won re-election to the Human Rights Council, just to name a few. How have these steps for the United States to rejoin the global stage impacted USAID's work and mission? And furthermore, what immediate actions did USAID have to take to rejoin the global stage, and what else is left to do? I mean, 10,000 employees and $20 billion, that must have had a major impact on operations.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. And I think I want to just start by saying that I believe the Biden-Harris administration has demonstrated its support and commitment to multilateralism through its nomination of and confirmation of Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield, who we just heard from. She is one of our shining stars in the US government, and I could not be prouder to work under her and with her. Also, our administrator, Ambassador Samantha Power, who for many years was also the US UN ambassador, another person who feels strongly and passionately about our working with multilateral partners. I will say every time I'm in a meeting with her, she's asking me, where's the multilateral partnership here? Where are we working with others? How are we connecting with our UN partners? So I just would say that we are really committed to all of this work. So you started out by describing a few of the actions. We halted the US withdrawal from the WHO. WHO is a very important partner for us, and we have come back to the table in force. They may not like that because at times we ask a lot of questions, but we are there, we're asking questions, we're being supportive. And we are one of the strongest voices now working with them on sexual exploitation and abuse issues, which are now coming to the forefront. We also not only joined the Paris Agreement, but we hosted a leader summit on climate change. We really felt that it was very important to have our multilateral and bilateral donor partners with us, committing to change on climate before going to Glasgow. And we will be going to Glasgow later this month, or I guess next month, early in November, and making renewed commitments. The president chose the UN General Assembly as the place where he made our final commitment of $11.4 billion annually to climate change. That is a very large increase, but it was a very deliberate choice. He felt like that was the stage upon which he wanted to make a statement about the US commitment to climate change. And finally, we are very excited about being reelected to the UN Human Rights Council. It will be a very important place for us to advance our core foreign policy priorities around human rights, around freedom of speech, media freedom, and also open and free governments. So we look forward to being there. I would also say that more generally in the past administration, there were several reforms put in place that really limited USAID's ability to work with our international partners. And we've removed those barriers and reaffirmed to UN agencies and to our missions and to our bureaus in Washington that we are open for business to work with UN partners. So we're seeking out new and different kinds of partnerships. We're working with UNDP, we're working with UNFPA, and many, many others. So we are committed. We're finding new ways of doing this. We're working on the climate, working on multilateral funds, which are not necessarily directly UN related, but the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, TB, and Malaria. We're working with Gavi, all kinds of different multilateral forums. And I just also want to say that we're super excited to be able to refund the UNFPA, which has been a very important partner for us on reproductive health and sexual health issues. And just last week, the US released their global equity, gender equity strategy, one that we will be very much engaging with UN Women, UNFPA, and other UN agencies on enacting.
And you just gave a lot of great examples of how multilateral and bilateral organizations work with you, and particularly UNFPA. But as you think about the development and the humanitarian challenges, and as we consider the strengths and challenges for both the UN and USAID, in your opinion, what does the UN do well, and what do bilateral organizations like USAID tackle more effectively?
So I think that's a really important question, and one that we are actually asking ourselves very extensively, with a slightly different twist in the Biden-Harris administration around interagency collaboration. Because what we're finding is that in the past, too many agencies, including our own, had gone out of their way to try to do things on their own. And so now what we're trying to think about is how do we do that across the interagency with UN partners, with others, NGOs, other organizations, think tanks. So let me just lay out a couple things and a couple ways that we value our work with UN agencies, and then a couple places where we do think that where we could do a better job across both your agencies and ours. The first one is, I think the UN agencies have extensively deep technical expertise and knowledge. And we really value that deep technical expertise and knowledge. And we want to make sure that what you're finding works and what doesn't work, the years of experience, decades of experience you have on the ground are being put to use. So for example, we work extensively with UNICEF on vaccine distribution. We don't talk, you might not hear a lot about it, but a lot of our resources flow through UNICEF to help countries prepare for COVID vaccines. Secondly, UN agencies have unique relationships with governments and countries. You all are seen as a fair partner. You're not seen as having a bias towards one or another. We often are seen as having a bias towards one or the other. And so we really value that partnership that you have with countries and your convening power at the country level, the regional level, the global level. And we look forward to working with you on all of that. Finally, you also have greater access to national leaders than we do as bilateral donors. You have been there for decades, in and out of trouble, in and out of issues. And so people trust you, they want to work with you. And that political access can be key in lots of situations. There may be instances where the US government has taken a political position a country doesn't like. And so we're not able to have that same kind of relationship. But we work through the UN to make that possible. The other thing I would just focus on is your ability to reach hard to reach populations. I was just listening to a podcast this morning about vaccine access and delivery, and they were talking about that last mile. How do we reach those who are hardest to reach? And you all have that access. You've been there, you know how to do it, you know who the local partners are. And so we are particularly, we engage with you in this, with this lens in emergency and humanitarian situations. Also a place where you guys have extensive experience, ability to get into places we cannot. I think, specifically around Venezuela, Ethiopia, Sudan, other places where we work extensively with WFP because they are there and they're able to get in. And of course, you also have a very important role, which is the most probably boring role, but the most important role on global norms. You set them. Your organizations set standards and ways that we all need to be working, and we value that. There is a norms-based system in this world, and we value the fact that the UN can do that. Now, one other thing I would just say that we wish we could tackle more effectively, and I know you all are working on this, as are we, which is how do we bring in the private sector? How do we get local partners, local organizations to be engaging with us in a way that is sustainable and leads to sustainable development? And you're working on that, we're working on it. There are also many multinational companies, local companies that want to be engaged in the process, but don't know how to enter. And so we are working on that, and we know you guys are too. The last thing I would say is that we just want to work with you to understand as well what works and what doesn't. And that is something that you all have done a great job of over the years, is letting us understand what are the interventions that make the biggest difference and how do we invest in those.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you mentioned reaching those hard to reach places, which makes me think of just in general, how do we become more equitable? And I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the operations of USAID. And the murder of George Floyd and the pandemic have had major inflection points on the need for more diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion in business, government, and other organizations. And at UNA-USA, we created a diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion task force to ensure that our members and stakeholders feel valued and empowered to support the principles and the work of the United Nations. Can you share how USAID is looking to ensure DEAI principles both within your organization and externally as it relates to beneficiaries and to impact?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. As I said to you, this is one of our top 3 priorities within USAID, as outlined for us by the president and the vice president. So we take this very, very seriously, and they have as well. They've made it clear that this is a priority, and within the first few months in office, the administration has released 10 executive orders on these issues. I could read them out because someone was so kind as to put them on my paper here, but they cover all kinds of things, everything from hiring to retention of staff, to how we apply a racial equity lens to our programs, to LGBTQ policies, accessibility policies. So this is something that we have been focusing on a whole lot and have been making a really big part of our effort and our work. In order to achieve all of this work, USAID has been working towards establishing an agency equity team within the front office of the agency, which was established on, I believe, the first day of Administrator Powers' term with us, which is the same day that she signed our 2020 DEI strategic plan, which outlines a series of actions, both internally around hiring, around retention, promotion, and organizational culture, as well as how we apply that to our work. And one of the ways that is really playing itself out is around the localization agenda. We're very focused on how do we really change the power dynamic at the ground level with our partners so that we are collaborative, we're cooperative, we're building coalition, and that we are not coming in the 1,000-pound gorilla pushing around everybody and their goals. We are also working with the State Department on our joint strategic plan, which outlines our plans and our goals for the next 5 years. And within that plan, there is a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we will be also focusing on social and behavioral change, understanding what motivates people to make certain decisions, to become partners with us, whether it's when you're making decisions in hiring, whether you're making decisions in awarding grants and contracts. We're also going to be expanding our ability to work with local partners. So we're doing a thorough assessment of what our rules, regulations, culture, and even our forms. Sometimes a long form can be very off-putting to an organization and may be difficult to fill out. So we're trying to figure out how do we make ourselves more accessible and able to work. And we're trying to reduce the complexity of our work. We want to be accountable for sure, but we don't have to have layers and layers of bureaucracy to make that possible. And finally, we're also very focused on co-creation of programs and design. This is a process that takes longer. It takes more time to have consultations with our partners, both in Washington and on the floor, on the ground. But when you do those consultations and you talk together about what are the outcomes that you hope a project will have, how do you want to measure those outcomes? What is the data you need to make sure that you are measuring the right outcomes? We're working on co-creating projects, plans, and evaluations. And then finally, we're really looking at how we collect data. We're going to be collecting more disaggregated data by sex and ethnicity, and we'll be making that public and transparent on our website. So we're really trying to open up the gates and make sure that you can hold us accountable to this commitment as well.
Thank you. It sounds like it's a very thoughtful, a well thought out strategy that we look forward to watching it continue to be implemented. So we only have time for one more question. We could talk all afternoon. Our UN Day theme, as you know, is creating a blueprint for a better future. And because at UNA-USA, we believe that each of us can play a part in advancing the mission of the UN and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. On a personal note, knowing your previous work in the anti-hunger space with Bread for the World and within global health, how do you personally hope to contribute to this blueprint?
Well, I appreciate the question, and Rachel, thank you. I am going to be counting, as we all will at USAID, on groups like yours and others to hold us accountable to commitments that we make, specifically, I know, on DEI and other places. So I look forward to an ongoing dialogue. On your question, I actually find your theme to be really interesting, because I think what it really gathers for me is that you do need to create the plan before you start implementing a plan. And you need a blueprint for the future. And the blueprint can't just be the first 3 steps you're going to take, but it has to be how you get to what is the final product. I think we just did renovations on my house, and I'm thinking about the blueprints where, everything was delineated, all the pieces were there, and you had to figure out what the order was to get them done. So I just would say a couple things. I think USAID has a very big place to play, and you're creating a blueprint for a better future. We're committed to our mission, which is to save lives, end poverty, and protect human dignity. That all of those things are critical to a better future for everyone around the world. And we want to be at the center of a lot of those efforts to address key priorities like COVID, like climate change, like DEI. On a personal note, what I would say is a couple things. I think you have to be an active participant in this effort. And that is what every member of UNA-USA is, right? These are members who want to be part of the solution, part of the answer. They want to help build sustainable development that gets us to a better world. We will be working very hard at USAID to communicate extensively about how people can be part of our mission and how our mission is achieved through the projects and the programs that we work on. And then finally, one of the things I hope to be able to do in my role is to really inspire other people to come and do this mission with us. Because it takes millions of people to make this possible, and people from all kinds of backgrounds, whether it's the public sector, the private sector, whether you're from the United States or from one of the countries we work in, women, men, all kinds of folks to make this possible. So I hope to be able to inspire people to want to be part of our future. Thank you. I just want to say thank you. I come from the advocacy community. I've done plenty of advocacy days. I think I've spoken to UNA-USA over the years and with many different hats. And I think what I will just close on is to say all the work that your members do, all the phone calls that you make, all the town halls you do in your communities are really what makes this all possible at the end of the day, because we all understand we have a role to play. So thank you, Rachel, for what you do every day. And thank you to all your members for what they do every day to make it possible.
Thank you, Michele, and thank you for being here today and talking to us about the work of USAID, its partnerships and intersection with the United Nations. And we will continue using our voices to advance the work of the UN and to support the work of USAID. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your program.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. At this time, I would like to bring my colleague, Troy Wolf, Senior Director of Partnerships and Special Initiatives, to the virtual stage to introduce you to our next set of guest speakers. Troy.
Thank you, Rachel. And many thanks to Michele Sumilas for explaining how USAID intersects with and complements the work of the United Nations. This is the perfect time to check in with Ariana to see how she's captured Mrs. Sumilas' remarks on behalf of the American International Development Agency. So let's take a look. Let's see here. Ariana?
Hi, yes, my video should be
Okay.
projected
Yep.
so everybody can
I see here. It's a little small, so bear with me, but I see determined, committed group. I see knowledge. I see access is key. I see equity. We spoke a lot about the 3 priorities of USAID, equity. I see educate. No problem saying this. I see flexibility of data and transparency, which is important. I loved her closing comments as well, where she spoke about our theme, a blueprint for the future, and that a blueprint is important to know where you're going, and that's something that we all want to focus on right now. I liked a lot about what she spoke about with partnerships. That's part of my role as well, and partnerships are critical if we are to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. She reminded us of the support that we are receiving from the current Biden administration and some of the wins that we have had. So this looks pretty great. Thank you for that. Thank you, Ariana. And now that we've transitioned from the larger, more national perspective about involvement and impact, let's move on to a more individual level and meet 2 Americans who are contributing to a blueprint for a better future through their work with the UN agency. We have asked both of our guests today to respond to the prompts that will allow them to share their personal journeys, including their magical moments when they felt most inspired with what they're doing. In addition, we've asked our guest speakers to also comment on whether they see anything through an American lens that they find interesting as they travel in the UN system. With that said, I'm pleased to introduce Besem Obenson, who is a representative from Guatemala of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, or UNHCR. From Columbus, Ohio, Besem credits her hometown with giving her the humanitarian bug and inspiring her to do the work that she does today. But first, we will take a quick look at a video compilation of Besem's action. Please play the video. Thank you for the video. Now you've seen Besem in a virtual situation. Now we're going to continue the virtual greeting, but see her live in person. And we're going to hear more about her work and what motivates her to support refugees and make an impact. Besem, you have the floor.
Thank you, Troy. Good afternoon for most folks. I know people are connecting from different parts of the world. My name is Besem Obenson. As Troy mentioned, I am currently the representative for UNHCR here in Guatemala. So I'm just going to run through the prompts that they gave us. I get a chance to talk about myself. As Troy mentioned, I was born in Columbus, Ohio. My parents were West African, so I spent most of my upbringing in both countries, well, 3 countries, moving around. And I would say in terms of my personal journey, I remember my father, when he got his PhD from Ohio State in 1970, was very interested in contributing to those African countries that were going through independence at that time. So I spent a lot of my childhood traveling with him to different countries, working with the most vulnerable. My mother was a lawyer, a midwife turned lawyer, one of the first Nigerian Cameroonian lawyers way back then. And she used to serve the most vulnerable. Among the vulnerable, the most vulnerable. What that meant was that most of the time, people didn't have the money to pay for her services as a lawyer, but she gladly gave it. So I would say in terms of what really motivated me from the beginning was my parents and really having them as mentors. I've had the opportunity to have coaches and mentors along the way when I was at Ohio State, having people who listened to me and who helped guide me. So of course, it made total sense after Ohio State. I graduated in 1991. I joined the Peace Corps. I went to Paraguay, and as most people that age, early 20s, I was hell-bent on saving the world and doing what I could do to give back. And it just continued. Peace Corps and returning to San Francisco in the early 90s, I worked with small business organizations, really providing services to low-income women who lived in the Bay Area on how to start their own business. And eventually I joined the Global Health Fellow as a fellow working in Peru. So most of my life, most of my professional and personal development has been around reaching and giving voices to among the vulnerable, the most vulnerable. And the reason I joined the United Nations was that I wanted to contribute on a larger scale. I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself, to be able to give back to or contribute to changes, because I realized that it's not just me. We all need to be, as Michele mentioned, this is an issue that we all need to be part of. So I wanted to be part of something bigger and be able to contribute as part of something bigger. Right now, as a representative for Guatemala, I've been here for about a year. I'm in charge of a $35 million operation, over 100 staff, serving more than 70,000 people on an annual basis. So I get to coordinate at the macro level, but also I get to talk to people. I get to talk to our refugees and asylum seekers. I get to interact with them. And I also get to see the fruits of my labor every once in a while. And this takes me to that magical moment. I just remembered I have several magical moments, but this one really stands out. About over a year ago, when I first arrived, I went to the border, met with this a refugee asylum seeker and her child, and she was selling arepas, which is sort of like a delicacy in Central America, and she was being able to make ends meet barely. And I asked her, I said, so why don't you expand and sell more since you're selling everything that you make? And she said to me, my neighbor who's Guatemalan is also as vulnerable as I am, and she needs to be able to make money as well. So I don't want to take the entire market. I want her to be able to have access to livelihoods just like I am. 2 weeks ago, I went back to the same community and I was just struck but in awe of this restaurant, and I saw her in the restaurant and I said, what happened? And she said, well, we were able to put our money together. We're able to open a restaurant where it's me, a refugee, and my Guatemalan neighbors who were able to hire other refugees and other Guatemalans in the neighborhood. And her daughter, who prior to that was just bouncing with life, she was going back to school. And so that's what it's about. It's about refugees are able to access livelihoods, but then there's also this sense of community and taking care of the community. So together it's possible to do it. So that to me, always memories like that and stories like that is really what guides me. And I have several of them. I've been in UNHCR for over 13 years, but that's what sort of keeps me grounded. And that's what keeps me excited about the work that we do. In terms of, I think, the American lens, I think growing up in Columbus and then also going back and forth between Columbus and West Africa at that critical time, which was the early 70s, I'm used to different cultures. So I can move around different cultures, different languages, different foods. And that combination of individual growth, but also looking at the collective, which I think is a great American value. You can grow and you can achieve that American dream, but not at the expense of other people, the most vulnerable. So that makes a huge difference to me. And then in terms of contributing to this, to the blueprint for the future, I firmly believe in working and investing in the youth today, because a lot of times we say that the youth are a future. That's true, but we need to start to invest in them today. You know, we need, and it's not just the 20-something-year-olds, it's the kids, the teenagers. I have a teenager myself, and I definitely know that we need to start to invest in it right today. We need to look at things like climate change, intergenerational learning, deliberate investment in young people today. And when I say deliberate, it's looking at the fact that we're not all the same. Not every young person has the same access to education, to health, to use of free time. So things like that, we need to deliberately look at it. We need to have processes in place that every young person, and we say nobody should be left behind, but we need to really look at it and invest in it. And in terms of my agency, that's what we're doing. We have a people strategy that looks into bringing in folks all the way from, you know, early, when they're still in college or when they're still in high school. Access to vaccinations is a big thing now, as Michele mentioned. So the blueprint needs to look at all of these things. Also with the gender lens, we need to look at the fact that women and girls and boys, members of the LGBTQ+ population require a certain approach that takes into considerations the levels of vulnerability, so that we don't, again, leave anybody behind, because we have to put that really into action. And UNHCR is definitely looking at that in terms of all of the SOPs and procedures that we have to ensure that we are contributing towards this blueprint for the future. I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you for those wonderful remarks, Besem. And I failed to acknowledge, I too am a Peace Corps volunteer, so thank you for bringing that into it. I very much appreciated your comments, and just want to touch on a couple things before we go to the next speaker that are relevant for us. You spoke about coaches and mentors. You know, for UNA-USA as a grassroots network, many of our members come to us, particularly younger ones, and they're looking for those opportunities. So this is a wonderful organization for young people to get involved in. You spoke about working with the most vulnerable. As we all know, the Sustainable Development Goals are to address the needs of the most vulnerable. And as a grassroots network of UN supporters, you're well aware that our network is looking at the local context and trying to make sure that we rise the baseline as well, if you will. I loved your comments about doing something bigger than oneself. I think that is of the moment. You know, when I think about my work in support of the United Nations, I am in service to the UN, and so we try to stress that to our people. And then you just said taking care of the community on the SDGs. We're really focused on moving the SDGs forward and localizing them. So thank you very much again for your comments and for joining us today. As I mentioned, I too am a returned Peace Corps volunteer, and it gives me great privilege to now introduce our next speaker, Dennis Latimer, who served in Peace Corps in Honduras, and after returning to the country as the Food and Agricultural Organization, or FAO's representative. Dennis, welcome, and the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you very much, Troy, and I'm deeply honored to share this stage with two RPCVs. I myself, as you mentioned, served as a Peace Corps volunteer. It just happens that here in Honduras, and after more than 40 years, I'm back. My story is very similar. I was born overseas, in Peru, particularly, of an American parent working overseas with the private sector. Grew up in a very small northern town of Peru, in Piura. And soon, for whatever reasons, we moved to the States, and then that's where I began my education, finished high school, moved to Costa Rica because of my father's work as well. And then once I graduated high school, went back to the States and started studying agriculture. Agriculture was my passion. I always loved animals. I always loved growing things. I was the kid that all mothers hate when they bring in all kinds of dead animals or spiders or snakes into the house as pets. That was me. I finished my studies at Arizona at Washington State University, and then soon after that, joined Peace Corps as an animal husbandry extension agent in Honduras, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Stayed 3 years. I did the third-year extension. It was just a wonderful experience. It shaped my career. It shaped me as an individual, as a person, as a professional, as an extension worker. Went back to the States to get a graduate degree because I knew that if I ever wanted to do anything or work in the international development arena, I had to further my education. Graduated from Arizona State University with a master's degree in agribusiness, and then soon found myself working for various international NGOs, including Catholic Relief Services. Had an opportunity to come back to Honduras at that time as the Associate Peace Corps Director, which was a lot of fun because now I haven't been a Peace Corps volunteer in Honduras. I knew what kind of mess the volunteers would get into. And now returning as the Associate Director for Agriculture, they couldn't pull no wool over my head. I knew exactly what was going on. And we had a very successful hillside agricultural program. Absolutely loved it. And an opportunity to travel up and down Honduras. I really know this country very well, like the back of my hand. After that, I joined CRS, went off to Bolivia. I've traveled all over Latin America. And somehow I got to meet people who were working with FAO, the United Nations agencies, and especially FAO in agriculture extension and agricultural development. And that was kind of like the inspiring moment for me as to wanting to become, like Besem said, of something much bigger, something that had a much bigger impact, something that could help thousands and thousands of small agricultural producers that feed us every day, help them get out of poverty. It's extremely difficult when we see nowadays statistics about who still is below the poverty line, who still is going hungry every night. And for the most part, they're small farmer producers, livestock producers. The very people that feed this world are the ones that can't get out of poverty and are the ones that are most vulnerable and at most risk because of climate change and whatever other shocks. And I just wanted to become and be able to serve, to be able to help, to be able to become more of a, more than just, I just wanted something bigger, to have a bigger impact. And I joined FAO. I served as an operations officer for emergency and disaster risk management based in Rome. What a wonderful opportunity to live in Rome for 5 years. And then soon after that, I landed a position in Bogota, Colombia as the regional coordinator for disaster risk management. And then from then on, moved up the scale, moved up the ladder of FAO. And lo and behold, a few years later, here I find myself in the very country, in the very place where I started my career as an extension agent. I just never dreamt of this. I never thought this would be possible. When I first got appointed as FAO representative for Honduras, it just seemed like a dream come true to come back to the very country where I started, a country that I deeply love and find myself very much aligned with and very much deep roots in this country. And it's been just a wonderful experience. I had very many, I can't pinpoint that one magical moment. All moments have been magical for me. All through my 17-year career with the United Nations, it's always been magical. There's never a dull moment. I never know what's going to happen tomorrow. As a emergency response coordinator, I always plan for the worst and hope for the best. And this has been my motto for over the last 17 years. And it really has helped me overcome those difficult periods. They have been difficult periods. This is a very challenging job. We are under a lot of pressure to be able to respond, to be able to help those farmers, be able to help them pull them out of poverty and out of food insecurity. But at the same time, it's been absolutely rewarding. Just what an exciting, rewarding career this has been. As a US citizen working abroad, it's been interesting. For the most part, I think that of all the countries that I've ever traveled in, I've always been welcome as an American, either working with the UN or working with an international NGO or working with Peace Corps. Always very welcoming people, always very friendly, always greeting you with a smile on their face. And inside just tearing me apart, because these are the very people you're trying to help who have nothing, but they share everything. They share such warmth, they share such hope for the future. And it's just been an incredible experience, a very rewarding experience. I am so honored to have been able to serve for so many years and be able to say, I made that difference. I put in that little piece of that one little grain of salt, or one little grain of that drop in the bucket that has helped people save their lives, save their livelihoods. It has been incredibly challenging. I am soon finishing up. I am finally retiring, finally. So I look forward to going back to the States and settling back into, my home base is Miami, and I'm looking forward to rejoining and reconnecting with my former Peace Corps volunteer friends in South Florida, with family and with friends, of course. And it's just been a truly joyous ride. We have to be very, very clear that the blueprint for a better future must include, just like Besem, just like the ambassador, just like the guest from USAID, we must include everybody. Everybody has to be included in this blueprint for the future. FAO just finished participating in the World Food Summit. It is, again, and I don't want to extend my time, but it's just incredibly sad to note that today we produce more than enough food to feed every single individual in this world. Yet close to 900 million people go hungry every day. How is this possible? Where have we failed? How can we transform? How can we, as an individual, as an agency, as a community, as a country, as a government, be able to help transform food systems so they are more just, equitable, friendly with the environment, because we cannot deny climate change, and sustainable for the future generations. I thank you, Troy, for this opportunity to talk to everybody. I see over 180 people on this platform. It's been truly an experience, and thank you for allowing me to share that experience with you.
Dennis, thank you so much for those comments, and I could certainly have a side conversation with you that would exceed the time that we have here. So without any further ado, I'm just going to move over and we're going to open up the floor to some questions from the chat. So just bear with me as we look at the chat. Let's see here. Says please, so this is please name organizations.
Troy, I can help with some of the questions.
Thank you, Farah.
We have. So we have both Besem and Dennis here. A question for Besem. What are the most important things that Vice President Harris can lead to the US to do to help Central Americans to remain and thrive in their home countries?
Yes, thank you for that question. That's a great question. And I will start by saying that most people who are forced to flee, well, there's a reason why they call it forced to flee, because they would rather not leave. They would rather stay in their home countries, have sustainable livelihoods, be safe, be able to do the normal things that we all do, which is, put your children in school, have a job, have access to food security, and be safe in your neighborhoods. So people who are forcefully displaced, unfortunately, are forcefully displaced because they don't have any option. They don't, if they stay, they don't have access to all the things that I just mentioned, which as Americans, that's what we all want. And if you ask everybody what they want, that is what they want. So to answer the question, what are the most important things? As you know, Vice President Harris was tasked by President Biden to lead the work on root causes in Central America, working on those root causes. Why is it that people do make that arduous journey to find safety? Why do people do that? And what can we do here? In these countries, in Central American countries, South American countries, so that people feel like they don't have to make that journey. So then there's working on things like, obviously it's security. People need access to security. One thing we've mentioned a lot is global climate change, which there is what we call the dry corridor here, where it's either eta iota, where people's livelihoods are just wiped out, or there's no rain, so they can't grow the crops that they need. So it's working on all the things that we've all mentioned. So it's working on climate change. Obviously, that answer will be different depending on what country you're talking about in Central America, because each country has its own context. Here in Guatemala, one thing that we work on very closely with the government is, how can we strengthen access to the asylum system? Because there are people coming from other countries who do need access to asylum. They do need access to security, international protection, as we say, here in Guatemala. So we work really closely with the government on strengthening those. I believe Michele from AID mentioned that it takes the whole. It has to be the response has to be integrative and holistic. So the government obviously has the ultimate responsibility to respond to these people who are seeking asylum. So as UNHCR, that's what we do. We work very much in hand with the government on strengthening the asylum system. We also work with these other UN agencies that have different mandates that work on things like access, for example, access to food, agriculture, UNICEF, protection of children, UNDP development. So it's one of those. There isn't one answer to this, but it has to really be holistic. And then including private sector, including civil society. And of course, in the middle of this has to be the people that we serve. They have a say, key say in what that response should look like.
Very good. We will move on to the next question. What is the description of the most highly effective international best practice to eliminate poverty? We can open that up to both.
I guess I can take that question. I think, like Besem said, it's a holistic approach. It's a multi-sectoral approach. There is no panacea. There is no one remedy. There is no one best practice. It's a holistic practices. It involves communities. It involves governance. It involves markets. It involves good in my sector, I always talk about good agricultural practices. So we ensure that the natural resources are developed, that we have enough water, that we have healthy soils, that we have forest coverings. It involves access to markets. It involves just the prices. When farmers are getting a third of the price for their coffee or for their products, they'll never be able, no matter how good and how much they produce, if prices are not fair and just, they'll never be able to get out of poverty, because seeds and inputs are so expensive, because other services are expensive as well. It involves in a global economy, and we are now structured in a global food economy. Today, we can get almost any sort of food all year around at any price. So we have to be very, very careful as to how we help and how we support the poorest of the poor the people who are left behind in especially rural areas, how do we able to organize them? How do we give them a voice to be able to compete in a global society, in a global market? There is no one formula, one solution, one best practice. It involves security issues. It involves health issues. It involves education issues. It involves migration. It involves, and by the way, there is a universal right to a legal and orderly migration. But if your community is thriving and offers young people an opportunity to make a good living, a fair living, like Besem said, very few people want to leave, very few. They only leave when everything else fails, and the only option is to get out.
Thank you for that. We probably have time for one other question. I'm going to say this is to both of you. What are the most important things that the Biden-Harris administration can do to lead the United States to help Central America to remain and thrive in their home countries? Dennis, I think you're muted.
I think that, didn't Besem already answer that question?
Okay, sorry about that.
Troy, I can help with the final question if you'd like that we have.
Okay.
Okay, great. This question is actually for both of you, Besem and Dennis. What is the most important message that you'd like to share with your fellow Americans on this program who are watching about the importance of the UN?
If I can start, Besem, excuse me, I think jump in, don't be afraid, explore. It's just the world is full of opportunities and wonderful ways to be able to participate and to contribute and to make a difference and to make an impact. Go for it. It's just an amazing career experience to be able to work overseas, helping the vulnerable people, helping the poorest of the poor. Over, Besem, to you.
Yes, I was actually going to say something similar, Dennis. And I think what I would add to that is that there are so many ways to help out, even beginning in your communities. Because a lot of what I hear sometimes is, well, in our communities, there is a need. So how can I do that there? So starting out in the communities, I think Americans have a lot to offer just because of what I mentioned. You know, we are a country of so many cultures, so many upbringings, and there's so much that we can add to the mix, even if it's just a little drop. So in your communities, for example, you know, with UNA-NCA, there's a lot of work that you all do, and thank you so much. I'm sorry I didn't say that at the beginning, for the grassroots work that you do in your communities. So even if you feel that it could be, yes, going overseas and volunteering, but in your communities, there's a lot of work that can be done to sort of advocate. So if you keep in the back of your mind, the work I'm doing in Cincinnati, in Ohio, in San Francisco, in Detroit, in Boston, at the grassroots level is helping somebody. There is that connection between what you do in this organization with the woman I spoke about that I met at the border who now has her livelihoods. So feel that there is that connection. We're all contributing. That old adage that we've heard for several years, it takes a village. That's really true. So it might not be, you might not see what the effect of what you're doing is on that woman that I see, or those refugees, but there really is. So as Dennis said, jump in. Feel free to reach out. I get lots of emails every day saying, so what else can I do? I'm very happy to sort of point you towards stuff that you can do. And again, I want to say thank you so much for the work that you all do. I hope you know that it makes a huge difference in the lives of the most vulnerable.
Thank you very much. So that's all we have time for today. But every day, it's important to recognize that the work of these individuals, along with your work to support the United Nations, is extremely, extremely impactful. Thank you again to Besem Obenson and Dennis Latimer for your service, for your Peace Corps service, for joining us today, and for the contributions that you've shared with us for building a blueprint for a better future. I now turn the stage over to Cynthia Yu, who among many accomplishments is the 10th UNA-USA Youth Observer to the United Nations. Cynthia?
Thanks, Troy, and thank you to Dennis and Besem for sharing your personal stories. As you heard, there are many ways that we can add to puzzle pieces to create a blueprint for a better future. Dennis and Besem each found their contributions within a UN agency, and in particular, the FAO and UNHCR. But as we know, there are many ways that all of us as everyday Americans can make a positive impact. Earlier in my term as the youth observer, I heard from many young people across the country during my virtual listening tour. What I heard was that young people are concerned. They recognize that they've been given chances to voice their opinions, to occasionally have a seat at the table, but youth want more responsibility in the decision-making and implementation processes. They want to do more. They want to collaborate more. They want to achieve more, especially in the areas of lifting up diverse voices, working to combat climate change, and to protect human rights. These three areas of work are not surprising to the UNA-USA because last year, during the UN's 75th anniversary, close to 2,000 Americans participated in consultations that gave them a place to share their concerns for the future. Equality, human rights, and the climate crisis were all key. You can read more about the findings from the UN 75 initiative in a very comprehensive report, which is linked in this chat. This also includes a fascinating deep dive into the sustainable development goals that matter the most to Americans living in the 11 regions that make up the UNA-USA across the country. To read more about youth priorities, please click on the link in the chat to read the full report. But even now, all of us, including youth and seasoned advocates alike, can take action. However, a better future depends on all of us, on each of us to make a contribution. Today, in celebration of the UN's 76th birthday and in anticipation of the change we'd like to make by actualizing the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, we want you to add your fingerprint to the blueprint. Let's do that today, right now. I'm going to ask y'all a series of questions, and I want each of you to consider your contribution to the blueprint by typing your answers into the chat box so we can perform what's called a chat wave. First, let's do a test run for this chat wave. So for those of y'all who are not too familiar with what a chat wave is, I'm going to ask y'all a question and you can type the answer into the Zoom chat. And on the count of 3, we are all going to put our answers into the chat at once, and I'm going to name some of y'all's answers on the spot. So let's start with an easy one. Where are you calling in from? And again, just start typing your answers into the chat, and on the count of 3, I'll start reading them off. So 3, 2, 1. Amazing. So we have people from all over the world. I see a lot of Southerners, a few people from Kentucky, which is great to see. I'm from Tennessee, as many of y'all know. There's somebody from Georgia, New York, many from Arlington and DC, California. There are people from India and Italy. This is really cool. Well, as you can see, all of us are from all around the United States and all across the country. But what we share is our commitment to creating that blueprint for a better future. So regardless of where we are from, it's great to see that we're all here today to share that commitment together. So I'm going to move on to the next one, which is, what is the most important global issue to you? This can be a particular SDG or an issue that really resonates with you. And again, I'm going to count off in 3, 2, 1. All right, a lot of people are talking about climate change, women empowerment, education quality, hunger, poverty, reproductive rights, COVID, lack of respect, peacekeeping. I love, Peggy, that you put in peacekeeping because, as y'all know, today we launched the Dial-In Challenge, where you can call your member of Congress and ask them to continue supporting the Peacekeeping Act of 2021, which is going to help us fund our commitment to UN peacekeeping. So if y'all haven't already, please call your members of Congress and ask them to support the Peacekeeping Act of 2021. A lot of people have put in global health and workers' rights, sustainability. I totally agree with all of these. And the great thing about the UN SDGs and all of these global goals is that they're all interconnected. So to advocate for climate is to advocate for reduced inequalities and vice versa. We're going to move on to the next question now. And this is going to be a little bit more personal. And it's, who's a person in your life who makes you want to work for a better world? This can be a family member, a best friend, even yourself. 3, 2, 1. A lot of people are putting children, grandchildren, your parents, people from particular countries. Oh, somebody put their professor, all the children, myself, daughters, your sons. A lot of people are putting in, somebody put in those who are marginalized, mentors. These are all really great answers. And it really shows that building a better world is not just for ourselves, but also for the people that we care about. And especially when it's about children, our next generation, the people who are going to inherit this world, being able to ensure that that blueprint turns into reality is going to be critical to building a better tomorrow than today. So thank y'all all so much for sending those in. And I'm going to move on to the next question. Somebody putting Greta Thunberg. Isn't she a star? All right. And this is, how will you ensure a more peaceful, just, and healthy world? We've already talked about the people that we want to build this world for. So now what are we going to do? And I'm going to count off again. 3, 2, 1. Being kind to others, teaching kids. I love that y'all put in education. I come from a family of teachers, and I can say for certain that education is a huge part of it. Somebody put in voting. That's so true. We need more civic engagement, and we need more young people excited about voting. Being a good role model, leading by example, advocating, kindness, respect, rights, global solidarity, education, being engaged with the UNA-USA, thank you, Pauline, activism, more inclusivity. Yeah, I totally second that. Diversity and inclusivity are the two big parts of my agenda as the youth observer. So thank you for your commitment to that. Youth development, advocacy, climate legislation, helping out with empathy. These are all really incredible and moving stories. And it really shows that there are so many different ways that we can all get involved in multiple avenues. SDG number 17 is about building those partnerships for the goals. And we can't do it alone. So whether you're a grassroots advocate, a legislator creating that policy, or somebody who's just teaching and leading by example, we can all do something to build that blueprint. And then next, after this call, what are you going to do to build back better in our nation via the global goals? So it relates to the last question, but it's more about the tangible aspects and the things that you're going to do immediately after. And again, I am going to count off 3, 2, 1. Advocating, volunteering, donating, calling your member of Congress. Thank you, Suman, because we launched our dial-in challenge, like I said, and we'd love it if you could call your member of Congress. Thank you, Bob, as well, for saying that you're going to call your representative. Advocating, meeting with people in Congress, wonderful. Working on female equality issues, reaching out to elected officials, a lot of congressional advocacy. It's so great to see all of this. A lot of people are volunteering, which I love that you're volunteering, because oftentimes global problems require local solutions. A problem anywhere is a problem here. So seeing that y'all are doing all this great work is amazing to just read out loud. How are you going to commit to ensuring diversity and inclusivity? When I was conducting my listening tour this past summer, I met with hundreds of young Americans who told me that they feel like they aren't being represented well, particularly people from underrepresented communities. So I want to highlight that commitment to diversity and inclusivity. So 3, 2, 1. Respecting others, international outreach, education, reaching out and collaborating, being open to others, being thoughtful with your interactions, staying connected, treating everyone equally, nonviolence, making friends with people who don't necessarily share the same backgrounds, treating everyone equally and with empathy and kindness and understanding. Wow. Well, thank y'all so much. I think that is the end of our time together, but again, thank y'all for putting in your answers to this blueprint for a better future, and wishing y'all a wonderful week. And other than that, I just want to give a few more closing remarks and just discuss taking this first step is sometimes the hardest part about making a difference. So thank you all for not only showing up today, but also for taking the time to share your feedback and your part of this blueprint. I'm looking forward to working with all of y'all and everybody who's a UNA-USA member to do that part. And speaking of the UNA-USA members who are doing their part, I'm incredibly honored to introduce Paula Boland, the chair of the UNA-USA National Council and also the executive director of the National Capital Area Chapter, who's going to share with us what volunteer leaders in the organizations are doing on a daily basis. Paula?
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for your ability to represent UNA-USA and to authentically amplify the voices of young Americans. It is so critical to empower young people to speak out about the issues they care about, such as climate, and to bridge the gap between the UN and our nation's youth for a brighter tomorrow. And you are doing that. You're bringing our youth together, and I want to thank you for that. Happy 76th birthday to the United Nations. Our movement of over 200 chapters have been celebrating across the country and will continue to do so until the end of the month. And we're truly honored to receive recognition from President Biden, as well as Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield, a true testament of the value of our work. Whether it is standing up for human rights, eliminating extreme poverty, putting an end to human trafficking, combating climate change, or protecting refugees, the UN is working to build a better future by confronting the planet's most complex challenges. But we all know that it cannot do it alone. While the UN is standing up for the world, we are standing up for the UN, and we do that through our chapter's work at the community level, bringing the SDGs home. As Cynthia has mentioned, one of my roles is to serve as the chair of the UNA-USA National Council, which is an advisory body to the organization made up of over 30 representatives elected by and from the membership from each of the 11 geographic regions around the country. The National Council is the democratic voice of the UNA membership in making decisions for UNA-USA. Together with my colleagues, we support and guide staff and chapter leaders to advance our mission of building a strong US-UN partnership, and we do that through education and advocacy. We have been brought together today because we are celebrating the work of the United Nations this past 76 years, but we also want to take some time to celebrate those who are part of the United Nations Association of the USA, who support and work tirelessly for the UN. When we think about progress and how we can work together to create a brighter future, we look to our members and chapters to see how they are paving the path forward. I am honored to present 5 winners of the UNA-USA Awards this evening, which are given out annually to recognize individuals and chapters who have contributed to creating a blueprint for a better future. So first, we will start with the UNA-USA Campus Chapter of Excellence Award, which honors an outstanding chapter that's based at a university or college campus. This award recognizes a campus chapter that exemplifies excellence and commitment in the areas of service, education, and leadership. For these reasons, it is not surprised that the UNA Harvard University chapter is the winner of the 2021 UNA-USA Campus Chapter of Excellence Award, given its role in service projects in and around Boston, working in collaboration with the UNA Greater Boston chapter, community chapter. UNA Harvard University chapter has also held monthly coffee chats to discuss the Sustainable Development Goals, Goal of the Month, has coordinated the Women in Power Conference along many other initiatives that engage students in the work of the United Nations. On behalf of UNA Harvard University chapter, Noah Casa will be accepting the award. Congratulations, Noah.
Thank you so much, Paula, and to all of UNA-USA. I know I speak for our entire board and our entire membership when I say that this is truly such an honor. Our chapter actually got its start just weeks before the COVID pandemic, and we decided to really use that time to try to bring together the community that, of course, was so separate at the time. And now being back on campus, we've been thrilled to, first of all, meet our members and our board members even, and second of all, continue our work. We've structured our desired impact into 3 key areas: advocacy, service, and fundraising. And through our speaker series, we host conversations focused around the Sustainable Development Goals, for example, about racial justice and healing, or about reconciliation and recovery in Rwanda since the genocide, or about the experiences and needs of Indigenous communities and the interaction with the UN. Though we are a campus chapter, we've worked to be cognizant of need in our surrounding communities of Cambridge and Boston, and have worked to integrate ourselves into these communities, especially through our service work with the Friday Cafe, which offers food, rest, and resources to community members in need. We look forward to continuing our work, and we are so excited to serve even a small role in creating the blueprint for a better future, a better tomorrow, one with equity and justice at its core. Thank you so much once again. This is such an honor.
Well said. Thank you, Noah, and congratulations once again to UNA Harvard University for receiving the 2021 UNA-USA Campus Chapter of Excellence Award. Now, moving from campus chapters to our community chapters. The UNA-USA Community Chapter of Excellence Award celebrates a chapter that has actively supported a local global connection to the UN within its community. This award recognizes a chapter out of UNA-USA's 105 community chapters across the country that demonstrates creativity, perseverance, and impact while advocating for the United Nations. By coining the phrase, "Keeping the Bronx Strong," UNA Bronx chapter has continued strong even during the pandemic, establishing over 25 partnerships within the local community and developing multi-part consortiums with NGOs, community leaders, and youth activists. The chapter's International Women's Day series entitled Reflections was a powerful celebration of Black women and women of color in leadership, which I had the honor to participate and truly enjoyed. These are just a few of the achievements that the UNA Bronx chapter has accomplished during the past year, and which is why we are proud to recognize the chapter as the winner of the 2021 UNA-USA Community Chapter of Excellence Award. Here to represent UNA Bronx is Tatiana Scanoberry. Tatiana.
Thank you, Paula. Hi, everyone. On behalf of UNA-USA Bronx chapter, we are honored to accept the 2021 Community Chapter of Excellence Award. Thank you to national leadership at UNA-USA, community chapter leaders, and UNA-USA Bronx members, and the UNA Bronx community for supporting us. Over the past year, we have held impactful conversations, created sustainable partnerships, and amplified the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as we continue thinking globally and acting locally. We are inspired by the opportunity our International Women's Day series entitled Reflections provided to spotlight the leadership of Black women and women of color by advocating for human rights-based issues. In closing, to our fellow community chapters, we encourage you to continue to lift the voices of youth, lead with intention, and create transformative and inclusive spaces for marginalized communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana, and congratulations again to the UNA Bronx chapter. We will next move to the UNA-USA Young Leader of the Year Award, which recognizes a UNA-USA member under the age of 40 whose accomplishments demonstrate personal initiative and commitment to the United Nations and UNA-USA. They have inspired others to support the United Nations and create meaningful change. And this is certainly the case with Isabel Treadle, the 2021 UNA-USA Young Leader of the Year. During Isabel's leadership as president, the UNA Orange County chapter saw a great growth in membership and increased engagement of young people. She created the Reaching for the Sky Scholarship, a $500 prize awarded to a young professional working actively on the SDGs in Orange County. From cultural dinners to fundraisers for domestic violence victims, to presenting at various UN conferences, to developing an SDG fortune teller tool. I remember that, Isabel, from the very beginning. She has always sought creative and meaningful ways to engage young people in not only understanding the work of the United Nations, but motivating young people to take action. Isabel Treadle is truly an exceptional young leader and is very deserving of the 2021 UNA-USA Young Leader of the Year Award. Congratulations, Isabel.
Thank you, Paula. And I cannot express enough my excitement with this award, as one of my main goals in life has always been to inspire and mobilize others towards social causes. As a young professional, I have worked in many areas, and especially they have actually helped me nourishing my skills, not just professionally, but also personally. I especially devoted myself to the spread and promotion of the Sustainable Development Goals, as you mentioned, by creating the SDG Fortune Teller. This is a tool that is not just being translated into the UN official languages, but other languages as well. And the main idea is to spread awareness toward the agenda that we have to 2030. As we all know, these recent years have been really challenging for all of us, not just because of the pandemic, but also because of the social injustice, the hate, and the violence that we have witnessed regionally and also globally. We have lost so many meaningful things in this battle, not just tangible things, but also people. And that is why I want to dedicate this award to my mom and to my son. They both represent this year in a unique way. My mom, she passed away recently with a life full of pain and sacrifices. But then yet, my son, he was born to heal and to fulfill and reiterate my purpose in life. I want to thank nationals. I want to thank the Southern California division. I want to thank the chapters. And I want all of us to take a moment and stop and look around and breathe. Life is so precious and yet is so fragile. Please remember the power of now. That is why the present is a gift. And I want to finish with a quote from Mahatma Gandhi. Learn as if you're gonna live forever, and then live as if you're gonna die tomorrow. Please find your purpose and act now. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. Beautiful, touching words. Thank you for all that you have done for UNA USA, your chapter, and what you will continue to do. And congratulations on the new addition to your family. We're all very proud of you. Our next award also celebrates an individual who exhibits incredible passion for making a difference. The Advocate of the Year Award recognizes an individual who has shown an unparalleled commitment while advocating for support of the United Nations on both the state and national levels. Cindy Serrano Roberts has been an ardent advocate for a multitude of sustainable development goals, whether through her participation in multilateral discussions as the only US officer delegate at the Women, Peace and Security Symposium, or by assisting women and girls escaping Afghanistan to find resources to support their health and well-being. Cindy finds meaningful ways to advocate for real change via the Sustainable Development Goals, and brings with her entire communities of supporters whom she has inspired to take action. Cindy leverages her experience in diversity and inclusion to ensure that she is advocating for everyone to receive a fair opportunity at living their best life. Cindy, congratulations to you for being selected as the 2021 UNA-USA Advocate of the Year.
Thank you, Paula. And I send a lot of aloha from Hawaii to yourself and to fellow advocates. So when I reflect on this past year, I'm full of mixed emotions in response to the social disparities that we've all seen across our communities. And I think of how advocates from all walks of life came together to elevate one another's voices, particularly for those who are no longer with us. I also think of the extreme change in climate experienced by citizens around the globe and the bold measures that we've taken to challenge policymakers to do more and protect communities, especially underrepresented communities, from the widespread effects of weather patterns. And when I think of this past year, I cannot think enough about my concern for my husband every time he stepped outside of our home to go for a run and his inalienable rights to rest and leisure. So whether you're a ghostwriter who pens your thoughts and opinions of injustice, or if you used your pen to sign petitions in support of matters that are close to your own heart, whether you've tied up your laces and walked alongside like-minded neighbors as an ally, regardless of how you chose to make your voice heard and elevate voices of those around you, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Pittman and Ms. Bond, for your strong leadership and support that enables advocates like myself all around the country to find their voice and to use it effectively. Big mahalo to the Advocacy and Executive Committee of the National Council for the opportunity to be selected for this incredible award today. And finally, to everyone watching and listening today, know that the world is a much better place with you in it. So thank you for continuing to utilize your own platform and your sphere of influence to move someone else's mountain through your personal advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. You're certainly an inspiration. And thank you again for your tireless effort and for your well-deserved title as Advocate of the Year. I hope many will follow that model. And our last UNA-USA award is a very special one, which celebrates an individual who has contributed outstanding volunteer leadership to benefit the UNA-USA movement. The Arnold Goodman Lifetime Achievement Award is a tribute to the late Arnold Goodman, a UNA member from Wisconsin who, by his example and service as chair of the then Council of Chapters and Division Presidents, and in other capacities, set a standard of excellence and commitment to the work of UNA-USA. Since 2003, when Jean Petstock Stillman, fondly known as Ginger to many of us, took on leadership roles within UNA, first as executive director of the Westchester chapter, president of UNA Southern New York Division, and now as vice president of the division for new chapter development, she has tirelessly pursued opportunities to support the United Nations in her community, in her state, and in her country. On a local level, Ginger has been instrumental in coordinating and lifting up diverse voices through her support of programming featuring discussions of race and inclusion. An incredible example of impact is the UNA Mid-Atlantic Regional Conference Members Day, which became so successful that it was transformed into the Global Engagement Summit for all UNA-USA members to attend within the UN headquarters in New York. Ginger's reach is tremendous, from her many local roles to her national influence. Ginger is the true epitome of a UN advocate for life. Congratulations, Ginger, on being rightfully selected as the 2021 UNA-USA Arnold Goodman Lifetime Achievement Award recipient.
Thank you so much, Paula, and to everyone involved at the national level who were instrumental in my being selected. Since learning about UNA-USA 20 years ago, I've been happy to serve in leadership positions with the Westchester chapter and the Southern New York State Division, and on the National Council and its predecessor. Meeting US and UN leaders and getting to know the excellent national staff members and UNA colleagues from across the country, including young people, have enriched my life. Our division created annual seminars on race, criminal justice, and human rights. We prepared reports on the Universal Periodic Review of Human Rights and the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. As Paula mentioned, for 8 years, I co-chaired the Mid-Atlantic Regional Conference, now the National Global Engagement Summit. Since my college days, I have supported the work of the UN. I became familiar with the smallpox eradication program and WHO in West Africa. I was a consultant with the UN High Commission for Refugees in Pakistan and the UN Population Fund in Lesotho. Also, my husband David had a 30-year career with the UN, and I followed the UN during that time. About the future, the relationship between the US and the UN is much stronger now than in the past 4 years, which we should be thankful for that. We have rejoined the Human Rights Council and can now lead global policies in climate and in women's reproductive health. Only with free universal elections and strong civics education, including international education, can we stay on the right track. UNA has a big role to play in all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ginger. And again, our most sincere congrats. You're one of the first chapter leaders that I met during my initial years in UNA-NCA as a young volunteer. And I will always remember those meetings in New York. Thank you for everything that you've done and to continue to be an inspiration for many of us. Congratulations to these truly exceptional members and chapters. Your work and commitment is certainly very inspiring to us all. UNA-USA is bigger, bolder, and better because of our members, their programs, and ultimately their dedication to supporting the life-saving work of the United Nations. I'd like to close with a brief segment of President Biden's UN Day proclamation, which was released recently. He said, "We are at an inflection point in history. The choices we make in the next few years, whether or not we come together to face our greatest global challenges, will determine our future for decades to come. Let us remember that our determination and faith in a better future laid the groundwork for the creation of the United Nations 76 years ago. Now, in a new century, we must work with allies and partners to strengthen the United Nations, to effectively and efficiently tackle the challenges that defy political borders and geographical boundaries today." I don't need to remind this audience that our movement of building a strong US-UN partnership has never been more critical. Thank you to all of you, leaders and members, for your ongoing commitment and dedication. Now, I will ask Farah Salim Ek, our Senior Director of Programs and Policies at UNA-USA, to help close our program. Farah?
Thank you, Paula, and much gratitude to you for your leadership. As you not only heard and saw today, the United Nations is vibrant, it's impactful, it's meaningful, not only for the people living outside of the US, but for Americans right here in our towns, in our cities, in our states, and in our country. Today marks 76 years of action from the United Nations. And as we close today's program, we want to offer you the chance to take action as well. As you heard from our executive director earlier today, Monday, October 25th is also when we posed our call-in challenge to members to pick up the phone and let their House representatives know that they want to have the cap lifted off the dues that the US owes for peacekeeping. You can take part in this effort by taking a picture of the QR code or clicking on the link in the chat, which will take you to a message that you can send to your House representative asking them to support HR 4420. And taking action is what our movement is all about. Maybe you've joined us today because you were curious or wanted to know more about how and why the UN is important to Americans. Why not join us as we continue to take action to offer more chances to learn about how the US and the UN partner together, and to be a part of the movement that seeks to ensure that our country truly exhibits that global leadership to better our world. And lastly, I wanted to do a final check-in on our blueprint with Ariana. As you can see here, the image captures standout messages, phrases, and symbols that have been mentioned throughout our program. This is an absolutely beautiful graphic recording of not only sharing what we want to celebrate because of what the UN has done for the past 76 years, but she has also drawn out a map that will help to guide our actions in the future, starting today and every day thereafter. And by our actions, I mean both UNA-USA and also you as audience members. Thank you, Ariana, so much for sharing this beautiful recording that we will keep again as our map to the future. And many thanks to our speakers, and thank you for celebrating UN Day with us. Until the next time, wishing each of you health and hope. Happy UN Day.
Happy UN Day. Yeah.